And then we will move to item D, a report on the Monroe County Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Hello.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Carlisle, and I'm the Drug-Free Communities Coordinator for Monroe County. I work for COOLICAP and with the Monroe County Safe Community Coalition. And this is Tracy Herlitsky, and she is the Director of Health Programs for CSIP 4. And we're going to be talking tonight about the Tomah results for the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, incorporating it some with Monroe County results and some statewide results as well.
So if you go ahead and advance the slide, just so you know, the handouts that you have are more than what we're presenting for you today. We're going to shorten it and keep it as concise as possible. I've been lucky enough to work with schools throughout the 620 area that we serve for about 11 years with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And I'm happy to be working with the Monroe County Safe Communities Coalition on the evaluation of their grant. Just a quick overview on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It's developed by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's used nationally throughout our state and in a lot of local schools. It's one snapshot in time of what's going on with student behavior. It's one view of their world. So it's good for planning, but it's only one piece of information. I encourage you to use other pieces of information for planning and evaluation. On the high school survey, there's 99 questions. Middle school survey, there's 57 questions on a variety of health topics, ranging from assets, safety, weapons, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, sexual behaviors, nutrition, and exercise. Most school districts, including yours, use voluntary or passive parental permission, so the student or the parents can opt out of the survey at any point in time. Go ahead and move on. I'm very proud of your school district because you have administered the survey several times, and it gets me very excited as a data diva to look at those trends. I'm going to share just a few of them with you today. So you've administered the survey in 03, 05, 08, and 11, and in the middle school and in the high school. So you're really using it truly as a surveillance system that it's set up to be. In 08 and 11, your school district used the online survey that's available through the Department of Public Instruction for free, and that's great. There's no cost involved, and it's working. And 2011 was the first year that all the schools in Monroe County took the survey in the same semester, so we could combine them to look at some countywide results, so that's very exciting. You can see your numbers up here for middle school. It's pretty representative of all students in middle school, so 544 middle schoolers took the survey, and 748 high school students took the survey. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, along with some of those trends. The first slide I'm going to start off with is a trend, and it's one of the asset questions that's on there about whether teachers really care and give encouragement to the students. A few things I want to point out on the slide before I get too involved is there are some data points that are missing in the middle school survey because it's shortened and it changes throughout the years. And then in 2008, when you took the survey online, I don't have access to that. Somebody in your school district does, so I'm missing some of those data points, but I still think you'll see the trends will emerge. And then also the state results are out for 2009. I put them in the 08 column just for ease of looking at it, because the 2011 results aren't out yet. But this slide shows a decrease in the level of support that students feel from teachers, feel whether they really care or give them encouragement and support over the years. Go ahead.
How is that question asked?
I have it exactly here. Do you agree or disagree that your teachers really care about you and give you a lot of encouragement? And then it's...
so that question's asked of a 6th grader?
Yes.
Do you agree or disagree? Can you read it again?
Yep. Do you agree or disagree that your teachers really care about you and give you a lot of encouragement? And then it's a multiple choice question, so they get to say strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly disagree. So what you saw in the last slide where the agree and strongly agree were combined together for reporting it out. Middle school, there's less trend data available because the questions were not added until after 08. So there's about 4 different stats on just one slide. I apologize, but I tried giving you as much information as I could. So about 54% of middle schoolers report ever being bullied on school property. And just to put this in perspective, that's about 294 middle schoolers who reported being bullied on school property. It's split up pretty evenly between the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and also among females and males.
So these are all our data, this is all our data
This
specifically?
is all Tomah, yeah.
Okay.
So about 44% or 240 students agree that bullying and harassment is a problem in their school. 11% or 60 students have not gone to school because they felt unsafe at school. And 23% have been electronically bullied in the past year among middle school students. Definitely bullying is a bigger issue in the middle school than in the high school. It's what it nationally and statewide, that's what we see also. Among the high school, there's 3 different stats on here. 23% or about 172 students report being bullied on school property. That's exactly the same or very close to what the state rate and the Monroe County rate is 23%. 49% or 366 students agree that bullying and harassment is a problem at their school. And 18% have been electronically bullied in the past year. And this one I broke out by gender because I thought that was interesting, and 31% of the females and 15% of the males report being electronically bullied. Suicide is the other one that I'm going to share with you today before turning it over to Natalie. And this one's really been interesting for me to monitor in your school district. So among middle schoolers, 19% or 103 students have reported seriously considering suicide. This has been a huge decrease since 2003, where it was 28%, but 19% is alarming to me. 6% or 33 students reported attempting suicide in the past year. Of those 6%, 5% were female and 7% were male. And then with the high school, the percentage who seriously considered suicide decreased from 27% in 2003 to 13% or 97 students in 2011. So that has decreased significantly also. The high school is at the same state rate. So it's been decreasing, but still is alarming.
So when you tripped a positive on that, how was it reacted to by the survey holder?
It's just a surveillance system. There's not, they're totally anonymous when they respond to it, so there's no way of tripping anything for staff to respond to whether they said they attempted suicide or seriously considered suicide.
So we would ask a student if they seriously considered suicide. They may respond yes to it, but there's no reaction from...
Not from the online system. I think the whole point of it is for the system to be, the purpose of this is for it to remain anonymous and collect the information. It's not intended to be a screening tool for mental health.
You just presented it as one. I'm sorry, I'm really uncomfortable. I wasn't aware that we were asking students, 6th graders, if they were seriously considering suicide. So we give a person an opportunity to respond, but then don't respond to their response, if you follow what I'm saying. That makes me very uncomfortable.
I know that the question is worded, have they ever? And it's not necessarily, are you currently thinking of it at this point in time? So it might have been something that 8 months ago that they would have responded, that they have thought about it at one point in time, but it's not currently active, that they're not actively thinking about doing it like right now.
But it could be.
They could be.
Were these questions reviewed by our staff prior to them being released, or did we just... I guess let me ask it differently. I don't recall seeing the questions themselves. I think I recall hearing that a survey was going to be done. Was it something that someone reviewed that would... I guess I'd feel more comfortable if Paul or someone was tracking on this, but if I'm real uncomfortable with asking the question, have you considered suicide? A student perhaps saying yes to that, and that's an opportunity for an intervention, for help, but that opportunity goes unanswered, and then we have a bad outcome that happens, but we had an opportunity to intervene. If I'm alone,
But I don't think that's the purpose of the study that they're trying to complete here. The purpose of the study to complete here is to look at what interventions we can put in place at the school level to prevent things like this happening, to give us a baseline of do we have a problem or do we not have a problem. And the problem is, and I think everybody would agree with you, everybody wants to do an intervention, but on the same, if you don't, you have a choice, either ask the question anonymous or don't ask the question. So if we don't ever ask it anonymously, those kids aren't going to tell us regardless unless we're doing something else. So this is telling us we have a problem and we need to put some mechanisms in place, because it's kind of a win-lose situation. If you don't ask, you don't know if you have a problem, but if you do ask, you have a problem. And I would assume that the survey, there's no mechanism for that student to put their name on it, and if you put their name on it, they're probably very unlikely to answer that question.
Let me ask it differently then. Do we or do educators have a duty to report?
Absolutely, we have.
Okay, so if a student were to express to any educator that's in a professional staff, or anyone within the district, a desire to harm themselves, would that staff person have an obligation to respond?
Yes.
Have we not asked
if
a
we knew
similar
who the
question?
student was?
But
not asking who the
creating a
student is.
blind, I guess, again, if this was presented as, and approved by this board, then I apologize for missing this, but I don't believe I ever understood we were going to ask students specifically about suicide, have them respond, and then do nothing. That I'm real uncomfortable
But
with.
at this, first we've done this to find out if there's a problem.
Well, we know there's a problem. There's a
Now-
problem nationally.
Now there's a problem. We've got this data that tells us there's a problem. From this point on, educators, us, the school district, we need to look at what we can do based on this data that's been brought forth.
If somehow my son or daughter hurt themselves and I learned that they gave you an answer that gave you an opportunity to intervene and you failed to respond, I would be disappointed.
But
That's,
we
I
don't
guess,
know
You would
who.
never be able to.
well, I guess, okay, so we're saying that we're going to hide behind that it was blinded, but the computer does know to a certain extent when the person's sitting in front of it. We could capture that. We had the ability to capture it and we chose not to. These aren't adults, these are minors.
But
John, I guess I
parents,
look to you as, I think you know where I'm going. Am I going down the wrong road?
No, I understand the concern. I guess I still do appreciate the need to have an anonymous evaluative system. Because it becomes problematic as well to have everybody. I don't know that they're going to get much in the way of results if you have people having to sign their name to these things and then handing them in. I understand your concern, but simply to say that we have to identify problems before we can address them. I'm assuming we already have some mechanism set up through counselors and that and students are taught that where to go if they're.
At the conclusion of the study, if they answered yes and they wanted help, there was some mechanism in place to say if you do want help, you can ask for it by doing this. There wasn't in the survey, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean maybe that was a shortcoming. I still appreciate the evaluative value of this. I understand your concern.
I have no problem with us asking the question. I'm 100% on board with asking the question.
the survey is conducted with a class at a time, typically, with our sixth graders, for instance. I think Mr. Wilkinson takes them to the computer lab to take the survey. So we certainly could be implementing it, you know, some conversation with the students after that, if you responded to this particular
Or
question
even if
in
you
this
haven't
way.
and you'd like help. Yeah,
that
just
you
something.
need help, we certainly can do that in the future.
I think I'd feel so much more comfortable if we were.
And just so you're aware, the questions, yes, are available to teachers to review, they're available to parents. So the letter that goes home does indicate that for parents who are going to allow the child permission, that they can come in and look at those questions as well. So that
But not
is
their
available.
students' answers.
But not their, no, it's
Correct.
just the survey itself.
And while the numbers are still alarming, they have decreased over the years, and I do know personally from working with the Monroe County Safe Community Coalition that counselors are actively working because we help to fund suicide prevention programming for the Tomah School District. So the counselors are aware of it. There is work that is actively being done for kids for suicide prevention. So when the numbers were even more alarmingly high, they saw those numbers and have done something since then, which is bringing the numbers back down, which we're very grateful for, but they are still very alarming.
My objection certainly is not to you conducting the study or to even collecting the data. I understand the value of that. It's just that I really do think we need a net. If we're going to ask the question, we have to have a net. So I apologize for interrupting your presentation.
I appreciate your concern.
I'd also like to, while we're on the chart of the suicide trends, those percentages, are those based on the numbers that were at the very beginning of this, of the 544 middle school?
And the 748 high schoolers, yes.
The percentages are.
Yeah.
That was for 2011.
Correct.
I mean, were there an equivalent when we're looking at other years? Do we know what numbers were involved with those?
I could look that up. I did not bring all that information. That's the wonderful thing of having 10 years of your data, is I have more than anyone could possibly want to go through. But their rates.
What's that?
The sample size?
The sample size. I mean, if there were 5 respondents in 2003 and one of them said that,
They're
Right.
similar.
you know,
Right.
I don't know if we're comparing things.
That's a great point. Their rates,
Accurate.
but I don't think that your student population has changed. And every year you've done a census of all your students. So that's why we don't have to get into the confidence intervals and all of that, because it's a census of your entire student body.
In 2003, all the students again took that, but I believe the population of students was higher in 2003 than it was in 2011. That would be my, probably by maybe just 50 students. Okay, but
I was just checking to see if I had any of the data with me, and I don't. So I'll be taking you through a portion that's talking about alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Tobacco, when we're looking at the trends, I believe that you have something to begin to celebrate here. Middle school went from 8% down to 2%, and high school from a whopping 32% down to 19%. This is still a number that we would like to see decreasing, but you've come a long way. Right now, you're consistent with the Monroe County average. Now we need to start looking at things like other tobacco products that are on the market and being marketed to youth, which is a whole different conversation than one we're having here tonight. But this one is specifically looking at data before other tobacco products came in. Next slide, please. Alcohol. Again, we're seeing a decrease here, that we don't have the data from 2003 for the middle school, but from 2005 to 2011, we're down from 7% down to 3%. High school was at 38% in 2003 and down to 19% in 2011. This is slightly lower than the Monroe County average, which again is a good thing. Next slide, please. Prescription drugs is a new issue that we're beginning to collect data on. It's a growing problem in Wisconsin and definitely in Monroe County. In Monroe County, it's been reported that 1 in every 5 high school students have used a prescription drug without a doctor's prescription. This is a very scary number. The thing that is even scarier for me to look at is that in Tomah, it's 1 in every 4.5 high school students. So that number is getting even smaller. One of the things that we are doing, Tracy and I are working together and putting together a prescription drug survey for youth, and we're hoping to collect some annual data where the youth risk behavior survey is done every other year, and with the grant that I'm working on, we hope to continue that trend to get the Monroe County data every other year. But what we're trying to work on is collecting annual data with all of the schools in Monroe County, and we're hoping to bring this survey to you as a board sometime in the spring for approval to be able to gather more data about prescription drugs and issues that we have going on in Monroe County sometime later on in the spring. So, next slide.
Just a few other observations. The number of students, high school students, report being offered, sold, or given an illegal drug on school property went down significantly from 28 to 21%. Marijuana use was very interesting to look at the high school level. It's 27%, which is still high because that's 202 students at the high school. But it's actually lower than what the state rate is at 34%. And the Monroe County rate is 25%. When I look back at the trend of this one, I was very surprised because I assumed that marijuana use was going up, when in fact it has decreased from 47% in 2003 to 27% in 2011. So that was a huge decrease, very positive. A few other challenges that I'm just throwing in here at the end. At the high school, physical fights at school, you're greater than the state average of 10% at 14%. And Natalie already talked about the high school tobacco use is a little bit greater than the state rate of 17%. And again, the suicide stat that we talked about earlier. Go ahead to the last slide. This is a different look at this because I know we've talked about a lot of numbers. This is the average high school classroom. You go ahead and click one more time. 7 out of the 24 students have ever reported using marijuana. Click again. 6 out of the 24 have been bullied in the past 12 months. Go ahead. 3 out of the 24 have been in a physical fight at school. 2 have attempted suicide. Go ahead. 4 have binge drink. And then finally, 6 out of the 24 have reported using a prescription drug without a doctor's prescription. So it's just a visual for you to put together on the average classroom what these numbers would really mean and how much it really could play into effect to the students' learning and how it'll affect their ability to learn. So I didn't want this to be a downer for you because you certainly have a lot of successes to celebrate, and I want it to be an encouragement to you to continue the hard work that you're doing in a lot of your buildings, because I am aware of a lot of the hard work that you're doing to make these numbers better.
We certainly encourage that the way that Tomah has collected data over the years, starting back at 2003, to have this much information that we can follow over time, to see the trends, to see that issues are being addressed, and that we can continue to follow it and to make sure that Tomah students are being well taken care of. And we've seen the difference. We've seen the numbers go down in many of the areas, and like Tracy said, some of the areas we were surprised to see that they've gone down, but grateful that they have as well.
Is there any way that you track, a lot of these risky behaviors? One student may do all 4 out of the, however many. I mean, is there any way that you correlate that together?
I could if I had a whole lot of time, because when we get the data, you get it. Like it just says student whatever XYZ, and then it has.
It shows their answers.
It just shows all the answers. So you could possibly look at it that way if you ever wanted to. It would probably take a whole lot of time, but you could look at it that way. Yes.
Well, I mean, you just look at a classroom like that, and it's hard for me to imagine that there's only a few students in there who've done none of that.
Right. You're
I don't think
absolutely right,
that's
and that's what
nationally,
that's what the research shows with the risk and protective factors that. That with the risk factors, usually if you participate in one, there's usually multiples going on there. So you're right.
And we do have a Monroe County data sheet that I can get to Cindy, and she can get out to the rest of you, that has all of the pertinent data on one sheet that we can share with you. And if you would like to see the numbers and to see the questions and things, we also can get those to you through Cindy as well, if you would like more information about what the surveys are saying and asking about.
Thank you.
So again, it's this type of information I think that we have to collect and be aware of, so that as we look to better meeting student needs, we can use this data to address those needs. And you can look at this like, boy, this is terrible that we have these problems, but I think if you look at it with a glass half full, we're aware now of areas that we need to work on. That is a real strength and a plus in allowing our staff to discuss how to put in place strategies and interventions that will help kids.
And I thought, Mr. Fushian, is your idea of opening the discussions during that time, or right at that time,
Well, I think truly we're,
is important.
my passion in this comes from, as you recall, prior to me joining the board, my job was running a program very similar to this for the government, and it's for soldiers returning. And the first thing we saw was, if we ask that question and we don't have an immediate response available, understanding the need for anonymity, but for a person or for someone, when someone says yes to that question, there is a very small window to respond, if they're truly considering it. And the opportunity to avert a bad outcome is there. So if we can just add that, I would feel so much more comfortable if we did. But I do understand the need for the data, and I do appreciate that we have to collect it and data mine it. But I recently learned that we hadn't had that yet, and I really would like us to add that. I do appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Any other questions, comments?